Sucker shit.
I was thinking, man.
Uh-oh.
Because, we getting closer to the summer. Coming out of COVID, one of my favorite places to go is the county fair. And actually, I've had some dope concerts at the county fair. I saw Earth, Wind & Fire. I saw the OJs with my sister, uncle, and they got the fried everything. Mm-hmm. You get ice cream fried, ribs. They got the petting zoo, and they got all the games and the rides and everything. But what people don't realize?
What's that?
Is that, the fried rib booth makes more money than the petting zoo. Earth, Wind & Fire got paid more than the people that's taking your tickets. So even at a place called the fair, it ain't fair. The fair ain't fair.
Not at all.
Right? So I'm talking to these people, I'm talking to these women, and they like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, the fair ain't fair. So I say, you look at all these places where it's not fair for a dude. Criminal justice system ain't fair. Child support and family court ain't fair. Shit, the VIP at the club ain't fair.
Hell no.
Right? Now, I don't think paying for every dinner and paying to get is fair. The fair ain't fair. Life ain't fair. You county fair niggas is on some sucker shit.
And there it is. So let's talk about something. Let's go home a little bit more. We might even get a third one in here, but let's talk about this one. Intimate partner violence. Right? So I just so happen to be reading the CDC report, right? And these numbers jumped out at me. Actually, I was also listening to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. Shout out to the Onyx report. So when you look at the percentages of folk who experience intimate partner violence, right? 44% lesbian to women, 26% gay to men. But I thought we was more violent. But okay, even with ourselves, we less violent than them when they're, okay, cool.
We're toxic.
61% bisexual woman, 61% bisexual woman, 37% bisexual men. 61, 37. Okay. And then we get to 35% heterosexual women and 29% heterosexual men. Now that's about a 7% difference, but it does not take into account verbal abuse, which probably blow this out the water. So, gentlemen, so what y'all think about that data point?
Well, it goes back to our previous discussions about myths.
The myths that are destroying the black community and black relationships.
Yes, 100%. If we're toxic, if we are masculine, because masculinity now has turned into a dirty word of sorts. Masculinity, they want to procure masculinity. They want masculinity in very specific spaces. Masculinity when it's time to pay bills. Masculinity when it's time to protect you in the home, regardless of what the circumstances.
Take that bullet.
Yeah, exactly. Take up for me, And masculinity to shoulder the burden of whatever comes miscellaneous after that. You know what I mean? Like, keep them shoulders nice and broad. Protect us from this. Be masculine. All the way up until the point where you get to the decision-making part.
Those are interesting stats. But I want to back it up into how it plays itself out in real life and the philosophies that we teach and that we have. So growing up, since people like these anecdotes, I'm gonna give you one. Growing up,
Personal story here.
I was told never put your hands on a woman. I don't think I was alone in that. I think many young men were taught that, right?
All of us.
So now we fast forward to today, and we'll see something where a woman is trying to like run a dude over with her car, or
Ooh, yeah.
do something while he's asleep, and
Saw
then
that.
she'll say, but he lied. Or the number one,
The number one.
he cheated. So let's reverse that. So if I'm with a woman and I find out that she's cheating on me, right? Then I can hit her with a Buick.
And the bumper.
Yeah, just take her out, put on El Dorado, bow, No, you can't. There's no reason, right? But there's a reason to hit a man, and it's justified. There's a reason to murder a man. There's a reason to castrate a man. There's a reason to do whatever you want to a man because of your emotion. But you're not adult enough to handle that emotion. Break up with him, divorce, separate, go to counseling, do all that stuff.
Right.
But if the same thing happens, I'm supposed to have that restraint. Okay? Those numbers are legit and those numbers are fine and they're accurate. I'm not, but I'm saying the real life application that we live looks like that.
You mean it's not a slow motion shot walking away from a car that you both physically own that you possibly could get in the divorce settlement on fire?
You know?
With
Oh, yeah.
Michael Bay style. You know what I mean? Oh no, that's not. Oh my bad.
With all his clothes in the front seat.
Yeah. Start tight, then open up.
And then the women cheer in the audience.
Yeah, exactly. To a nice liberating song. You know what I mean? Girls Rule the World. No, that wasn't out yet. My bad.
But all jokes aside, what we do have a violence issue in our community, but we have a violence issue in our relationships that goes both ways most of the time. Again, let's give the disclaimer for the folks with the helmets on this watch.
Oh,
Right.
We not talking about Ike Turner coming in with cocaine on his mustache, slapping people around, okay? Right. But you got to say it because right? We talking about, because here's another study in what the studies have shown. Many studies have shown women are more likely to initiate the violence in a relationship, and they're more likely to use an object. That's because of the discrepancy in size and strength. While men are more likely to do the most damage. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Given the physicality and the
physicality
nature
and the size.
Yeah.
But if you don't initiate that first thing, you don't get the second. Mm-hmm. So everybody needs to put their damn hands down and learn how to talk to each other and learn how to reason and learn how to work it out and handle those demons that's inside of you.
Exactly. Now let's look at the history of that. Let's look at the history of expression for Black people in the United States under chattel slavery. Understanding that it was illegal for us to laugh. Okay, a very essential emotion, illegal for us to laugh for years. That would get you lashes. That would get you beaten. Even the term barrel of laughs referred to the slave putting his head in the barrel or her head in the barrel in the field to laugh, to release that emotion. A word like don't sass me. The violence inflicted upon making eye contact with a person of authority. Look at a police officer and look what happens. Stare a police officer in the eye, driving or anything else, and see how you get questioned. It's that sass. There's a history that exists of us having to take emotions and suppressing them. And that was those actions were codified by law for years. And even if they weren't codified by specific laws on the books, they were codified by violence. And that violence still exists to this day. So there's no space for us to really express our emotions. And what happens is the lack of expression and the space to express it and the means to effectively do it doesn't happen, and we end up inflicting self-harm on each other by doing it. And then we do a further disservice by assigning it totally to men.
Well, it's a trip because it makes me think of like a mother and father lose their child, their son, in something tragic, whether say it's with the police, and then they're on camera and they're like, oh, look how they're so composed and they're asking for peace and they're so dignified. Meanwhile, the Cubs win the World Series and white dudes out there burning down trucks and tearing up stuff, and they like, well, they're just celebrating, that's the follies of youth. So it is a double standard there. But in order for us, see, it goes back to this. Everybody, there's this thing where we're trying to be separate and, oh, I'm this and I'm that. Everybody's black, black. And you can't fix something until you truly diagnose it. And everybody's trying to opt out of the bad stuff and just say, oh, I'm just this good stuff. No. We are all of these things, and we share the responsibility together, right? I will own the part that we contribute on the man side, and let's work on it. But I need my counterpart
to be on the same page,
equally accountable, and not give the excuse, oh, I was mad, that's why I slapped him, or I pushed him, or he's big, he can handle it, right? See, and if it's not for me, well, think about your sons. Do you want your sons being slapped and being put in that position? And if you're a mom and you saw the video of his girlfriend hitting him, how would you react? Okay, well, now you're that woman. So in those numbers, bear it out. And I can't wait for the comment to go, well, where'd you get your study from?
CDC.
The CDC. I guess the CDC is no longer reputable because I don't agree with them. Right?
They had you locked up for the last 18 months.
Yeah, they was reputable enough to have your ass buy 700 rolls of Charmin and go hide in the closet because they said so, but not on this.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought this stat up, because there's this, when we talk on one of our shows about the myths that are destroying the Black community and the myths that are destroying Black relationships. And one of those myths about the Black community is that Black men are hyper violent, right? And so what these numbers show, that when men are together in relationship, we're less violent than when women are together in relationship. When you're in a mixed relationship, when we talk about mixed, sexuality, bisexual on both sides, again, significantly lower when men in those relationships. And when we talk about heterosexual men and heterosexual women, it's literally statistically damn near the same, right? So there's no data that shows that we're hyper violent, right? So it's just a narrative that's destroying our relationships and destroying our community. That's how I want to point that out.
There's a natural inclination in men not to even argue with women.
Natural.
So I don't know how you go from he don't even want to argue with me most of the time to he want to slap me around
all the time.
That's a huge jump.
Right.
That's a huge leap. There's a natural inclination in us to protect women.
Right.
And it's backed by most of our upbringings, especially since the majority of us are raised in single mother homes. So are our mothers saying, go punch the hell out of some woman? I doubt it, right? So our actual upbringing and background and everything doesn't fit the narrative, but the narrative is powerful for a reason. But we didn't give ourselves this narrative. So who gave us the narrative? And what is it being used for? And why are you so quick to cheerlead for it like it's good?
Right.
Wouldn't you want it to not be true?
Right.
But what if everybody took ownership? What happens next?
That's the question.
That's what
right?
happens next.
That's the question, right? That is the question.
No, then you got to take off your pink pussy hat and stand next to that white lady.
Oh shit.
We could actually use that ding in the elevator.
Yeah, that was dope.
Damn it,
dope.
like, that's
so you
hurt.
talk about pink pussy, you can make me get into feminism.
No, but we can get to that in a minute. But see, this is I want to just say this.
Shoot it.
Don King had King Promotions. Bob Barham had Top Rank, right? They ain't got nothing on some of these women. Some of these women are the greatest fight promoters I've ever seen in my life. And I'll say it because I'm gonna say it. Some of these women gonna start a fight in the empty room.
Sleep with the fist ball.
I'm like, the hell, you gonna let him talk to me like that? Well, you was up in his face like you was arguing balls and strikes and stuff. But what you think that man gonna do, right? And so all of this stuff is part of issues that we need to resolve within ourselves. There's a portion of our community that doesn't even think you love them unless you fight.
Yeah.
That's a sickness.
Looking to some
Unless that emotion is coming out.
Exactly.
Because they've grown up in such a turbulent situation, peace makes them uncomfortable, right? If the woman can inspire a man, and if we say that to a woman, if I wrote a poem, how women inspire men, and they'd be like, yes, that's beautiful, yes, we are, we queens. Okay, well, queen, do you inspire peace? Are you an agent of chaos in every place you walk into?
It's always twofold. There's always the other side of the coin that exists, that and we hate to acknowledge that. Like we can say and you can use that inspiration things, like specifically for music. Like you could say, the amount of euphoria that Stevie Wonder makes you feel when you hear As and you reflect upon the people in your life that embody those things that he's describing with. And by the same token, if you're listening to things that are toxic like that, if you are listening to music that promotes those kind of things, why can't it also inspire the inverse? Then you can't give it credit for one thing and then negate it on the opposite side. So if you're a young man in a household and you're surrounded by women and you know a bunch of women who say made bad choices, you know what I mean? And they're constantly talking about what men aren't. How do you expect him to embody anything about what men are? Because I've been in that space. I've been the little boy in there listening to 4 or 5 women who made terrible relationship decisions. You know what I mean? Now the triumph would have been coming into the next relationship, watching them evolve and make a better place for themselves in their next relationship, because I'm still there. I could still see it, and I would be able to see that evolution. But most of them didn't do that. Most of them made the same mistake again, So what about your sons? What about your nephews? How are you trying to invigorate change, positive change in them? Because there are certain things that we won't say around our daughters. There are certain things that we won't say around our nieces. Specifically anything disparaging to their mothers or the women around them, or even your own mother. You always meter that. You always try to give it some perspective. Like, well, have an understanding of you try to balance that, because you want them to understand that that person isn't binary, and you're trying to give them the full embodiment of what they are, and that people can make decisions that aren't necessarily in their best interest, or yours for that matter, when they're emotional and in that emotional state. But how often, even if you can reflect upon your childhood, let's go anecdotal, have you heard some version of that nigga ain't shit?
Bad faith.